Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Trump administration has been setting out its plans for dealing with Iran in the future. But first, allegations are emerging tonight linking Donald Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, with the Ukrainian president, Petro Poroshenko. Over now to our Washington correspondent, Kylie Morris, with the latest. Kylie.
Yes, John. As we know, Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's personal lawyer, is currently under investigation in the courts in New York after a tip-off from the Mueller inquiry. There have been all kinds of allegations against him that he was basically shopping for cash for access to the president. Companies such as AT&T, the American telecommunications giant, has been caught out paying $200,000 to Michael Cohen. They say they were paying to understand better the president's way of thinking, but they have now said that they regretted that payment. Now, a new bombshell, this is based on BBC reporting, that the Ukrainian government or Ukrainian sources were prepared to pay $400,000, may have indeed paid $400,000 to organise a meeting with the Ukrainian president, so between the Ukrainian president and President Trump. Important to say, Michael Cohen has denied this allegation, and of course the White House maintains a position that it was unaware of Michael Cohen's activities. But it is a substantial development in an increasing kind of set of allegations now against this man who was really a key figure in President Trump's campaign and remains so into his presidency. And the president's not only under pressure at home but also internationally over the fallout from his decision to abandon the Iran treaty. Absolutely, John. We've been hearing from Mike Pompeo, the new Secretary of State. He's been on Capitol Hill today trying to explain to Congress his thinking on Iran now. The repercussions are really, I think he is now the point man on this. He is having to describe a plan B, which basically involves a set of demands asking Iran to reform itself, to change its behaviour, otherwise be prepared to face the strictest sanctions in the history of the universe. That's basically what his position is. He's maintained that position throughout the hearings. We are now getting responses, though, from the Iranian government. The Iranian foreign minister spoke earlier today. This is what he had to say about Mr. Pompeo's comments.
Frankly, Mr. Pompeo's comments are baseless and devoid of any logic, and it's not even worth responding to them. All I want to say and repeat again is that he and other officials in the current US administration are not only prisoners of their baseless ideas and old illusions, but are also prisoners of corrupt pressure groups. Almost every day, international public opinion witnesses revelations about such groups that show their real intentions. All this really shows is how United States foreign policy has become bankrupt.
The Secretary of State has also been trying to respond to concerns about the North Korea meeting due to be happening between the summit, due to be happening between President Trump and President Kim next month. But certainly Iran is a real focus. John.
Kylie Morris in Washington. Well, joining us now from Washington is Andrew Peake, the US State Department's Deputy Assistant Secretary with responsibility for Iran. He's a former Army intelligence officer who was appointed by Donald Trump at the end of last year. Mr. Peake, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, the President has made these demands, and indeed the government of the United States, we assume, is behind these demands, 12. But you've given no indication that any other country on earth has agreed to what you're doing. How are you going to enforce them?
Well, over the next several weeks, we're going to be setting out on the road, as the Secretary alluded to engage our partners around the world, not just in Europe, but in Asia, in the Middle East, and elsewhere, to explain our policy, explain what the sanctions mean, and explain why we're doing it, essentially to help to rebalance the Middle East, to push back against some of the more aggressive Iranian behavior we've seen since the conclusion of the JCPOA in 2015.
And this is worth sacrificing a nuclear treaty which has so far been abided by Iran, verified by the regulator, the AIEA, 9 times, in the interests of a goal that you look very remote in achieving.
Listen, we are tremendously concerned about the last 3 years of Iranian behavior in Syria and Yemen and elsewhere. The problem with the JCPOA from that perspective, in addition to the nuclear issues, the lack of IAEA inspections to military sites and other things, was that essentially it cordoned off certain entities that were instrumental in Iran's projecting power throughout the Middle East, like the Central Bank of Iran. In addition, it almost mandated a top line of investment, thus separating, decoupling the kind of economic consequences at the strategic level from some of Iran's risky foreign policy decisions.
Well, now, Mr. Pompeo, your boss, says that Iran's sins include assassinations in Europe. Could you just identify a few of the places where these assassinations have taken place and who the victims were?
Look, Iran has a long history of links to terrorism. I will defer to the intelligence community for more on that. But what is clear is that...
Forgive me, no American official has been able to spell out one single place where any of these assassinations have taken place. And you seem to be in exactly the same state.
Again, I would offer that that Iran has a long list of terrorist-supported activities around the world, including in Europe, and I would let the intelligence community answer that question.
You see, this vagueness, on top of the utter certainty that this country, Iran, was abiding by the nuclear treaty, is disastrous. You can give us no instance of some of these things which are being accused against Iran, and you are not prepared to accept that they were abiding by a nuclear treaty which was approved by the international community vested in the United Nations.
But that's not true. For example, missile proliferation to the Houthis are an incredibly risky foreign policy decision that I don't think Iran has fully internalized the risk of. One of those missiles lands in the wrong place, and you could see a significantly destabilized region. That's just one example. Iran's behavior in Syria is another example.
Mr. Peake, none of these things have anything at all to do with the nuclear treaty, not one of them. Nothing was said about missiles. What was said was that they would set up a scrutiny of their nuclear program and vet it regularly. It's been vetted and they've passed.
Again, though, what I was trying to lay out earlier was why the specifics of the JCPOA degraded our ability to counter with this incredibly alarming behavior elsewhere. It's not like you could have one and address the other. The one hurt your ability to address the other and essentially broke the dialectic of action and reaction that I think is important to imposing cost-benefit calculations on the Iranian regime.
Mr. Peake, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Washington.